to deal with the issues that pertain to the discussion documents for the Taxi Lekgotla. Advocate Makhatu is the acting DDG at Public Transport in the department. That is him. He's afraid of coronavirus, as you can see. And then we also have Dr. Mokonyama, who's an expert on the taxi industry. You will also field questions. You've done important work over the years in terms of the taxi industry. And then we've got Lawrence Fikile, who's the chief of the steering committee, who's the special advisor to the minister. Fikile was here in 2006. 1997. But when was the NTT?
1995, 1996.
Yeah. When the NTT took place around that period, 95, 96, Fikile was part of the secretariat under Minister Maharaj. Yeah. That is then. The history of the taxi industry is littered with gruesome tales of conflicts and violence that has left many people dead and families robbed of breadwinners. It is a history of struggles for survival. This is an industry that has pioneered its own growth and evolution despite difficult odds. Many initiatives aimed at forging unity in the taxi industry have seen the light of the day over the last few decades, and many have failed. This is an industry that has tremendous potential to become a model for real empowerment. This is an industry that generates revenue in excess of 40 billion rand per annum and consume more than 2.1 billion liters of fuel per annum. It is for this reason that shortly after my appointment as Minister of Transport, I prioritized the tackling of the difficult issues facing this industry and convened a National Taxi Lekgotla. It is not my intention to reinvent the wheel and pay scant regard to the huge strides made by successive ANC administrations in regulating, formalizing and empowering this industry. My job is to finish the job. That is what I'm here about. It's not to reinvent the wheel. The tendency with us in government, which we in the ANC have warned ourselves about, is that whenever the new administration come or new minister come, seeks to undo the good things that have been done by the previous people who were actually in charge, and bring new things that are not even in the catalogue of important things that need to be done by the administration. And my intention is not to reinvent the wheel, is to finish off where Platin Zimande left off and run with the baton. And ensure that if the path or the third road has not been complete, our job is to complete. We must build on the progress that has been made in various engagements with the industry and learn lessons from those initiatives that have not delivered the intended outcomes. The first administration of the Democratic South Africa initiated the National Taxi Task Team under the able leadership of Minister Maharaj to find a lasting solution to the challenges facing the industry and to develop a blueprint for its sustainability. The final recommendations of the NTT were a product of a robust and honest engagement with both the industry and civil society. These recommendations, which were a product of consensus between the taxi industry, civil society, and government, affirmed the need for an industry that is formalized, effectively regulated, and economically empowered. Every time you go around the corners, you hear the stories. Taxi industry is not formalized. Taxi people don't pay a tax. and they are unregulated and all of that. And the taxi industry is not subsidized. And those are the things that you hear all the time as the buzzword. It was in 1996 when the base and the foundation was laid, and successive administrations thereafter seek to take this to the logical conclusion, but it did not happen. And we need to basically take that to its logical conclusion. These recommendations, which were a product of consensus between the taxi industry, civil society and government, affirm the need for an industry that is formalized, effectively regulated, and economically empowered. We have no doubt that these have withstood the test of time and remain a yardstick against which we measure our progress. We are still grappling with intractable challenges that have proven to be bottlenecks in the transformation and development of the taxi industry. The National Taxi Lekgotla will be about reimagining a taxi industry of the future where it is a major player in the economy. So this is not a talk shop. Government seeks to convene this Lekgotla to engage the taxi industry and reach agreement and a deal on the following issues that I've actually mentioned. So once a deal has been reached, we are also working on the practical implementation of those decisions with the endorsement of cabinet going forward. However, in order for us to place the industry on a sustainable growth path, we need to confront the challenges head on and have a no-holds-barred conversation on the ills of this industry. Hold no holds-barred conversation on the ills of this industry. Unity in the industry remains a challenge as violence and conflict driven by turf wars and leadership contestations continues unabated. Associations remain unregulated and operators are not held accountable for their conduct through effective law enforcement. Leadership of the South African National Taxi Council as a recognized industry representative body is contested. You know that there is a national body called the National Taxi Association, which is NTA, which has never recognized Santaco and is also in existence. The industry must be able to speak in one voice if it is to succeed in entrenching a culture of accountability. Unity of the industry is sacrosanct and central to any form of regulation or empowerment. It is a sad reality that the taxi industry continues to operate as an informal sector on the fringes of formal economy. It is mostly not structured along legally recognized business units such as companies or cooperatives. There are instances where some operators have come together and registered companies and cooperatives. But this is not the general character of the industry. Equally, the industry does not contribute to the tax base in the form of corporate taxes and is notorious for failure to comply with the labor laws to ensure workers are protected. Recently, I've seen the emergence of a trade union affiliated to COSATU under the taxi industry that organizes the workers who are working in this particular industry. We have to admit that the regulatory framework remains weak and ineffective due to a fragmented approach in law enforcement. This is a matter that, as government, we must pay attention to. The roadmap towards the National Taxi Lekgotla, which will take place on 29th October 2020, starts with the rollout of the public discourse platform that we launched on the 20th of August 2020. Today we are launching the discussion documents which will inform the content of the conversations with the taxi industry, other critical stakeholders and civil society. Ours is not to begin another process, but to take what was started in 1995 to its logical conclusion. So these discussion documents we are releasing today, are we ready, Vengil? Are not views of the South African government, are discussion documents that are aimed at ensuring we discuss and at the same time we hold no conversation barred on these particular matters, and we arrive at the deal making by October. So October is not going to be an event where people eat cakes and disappear. It's going to be an event, time permitting, the president will bless us with his presence to also share his perspective, because October is Transport Month, and we will then unveil the deal in terms of what has been agreed upon. So there is a serious conversation, of which most of it we know already. What is it all about? Starting from the coming week, we will engage with stakeholders and civil society through various platforms that include all forms of media, from print, radio, and television, digital platforms, and the webinars. We invite every South African to contribute to the conversation about building a taxi industry of the future. Engagements will vary from meetings with the task team on virtual platforms to written submissions that will be considered as part of packaging the final documents for the Lekgotla. This is organic. It's not coming from the top. It's a pyramid scheme, but a progressive pyramid scheme, in a sense that we start from the bottom. In the districts, we engage everybody, most importantly the taxi industry people and the committers and everybody, organized formations. And then we will come then now to the steering committee to summarize the agreements that we need to consider in the steering committee. Everybody participate in the steering committee. Yesterday I met with NTA, and they complained vehemently about the process, and I told them that they are invited and everybody else is part of this particular process to make a contribution. Government cannot impose a solution on the taxi industry. The solution must come from conversations. Cabinet cannot meet on its own and design a model of subsidy with the industry without agreement with the interested bodies in this particular instance. So ours is a democratic process, is an open process, and taking into logical conclusion what could not be concluded over the years from 1995. The documents we are releasing today are only intended to stimulate debate. I've already attached a disclaimer. They do not in any event represent the views of government. The views of government will be expressed on these particular issues in the process of the conversation in terms of the model. I will be going to Cabinet, among others, to solicit an agreement also on how we foresee our way forward on most of these particular issues. And discussions do not represent any hard and fast position of government or industry structure. The outcome of this debate will inform the consensus and the agreement and the deal that must emerge out of the provincial Lekgotla. All provinces have been engaged on the roadmap, and everybody must be drawn in to take part. All our MECs are on board in relation to this. And ultimately, a consolidated view will be presented at the National Taxi Lekgotla for agreement and endorsement. The discussion documents are packaged along 4 major themes. These are unity and leadership of the industry, 2, taxi industry empowerment model, and taxi industry regulation, and taxi industry professionalization and customer care. Now I will deal with briefly elements of what is entailed in this particular discussion document, starting with unity and leadership. In tackling the discussion about unity and leadership of the industry, among others, we must have an honest and robust conversation about the key drivers of disunity and violence. Other critical issues raised in this discussion include a discussion about a council that truly represents all types of taxi operations in the country. Is critical and must be robust. We know that South African National Taxi Council, SANTACO, was established following a process that started in 1998, when it became apparent that other industry players were not on board. The structure that was established at the time, a process that led to the inaugural conference of SANTACO in 2001, was initiated under the leadership of Minister Dala Omar. While this may be the case, we must engage with the issues flagged by the NTA and find each other on the shape and form of the council that will command the respect of everybody in the industry. The discussion document teases out a number of options to be considered, not only in the role of the industry leadership structures, but also rules that must underpin such leadership. We have come a long way since 2001. You remember the fragmented organizations of the industry, South African Black Taxi Association, and all of that were there, but all of them were amalgamated under SANTACO. And we have come a long way to this day to have SANTACO as the umbrella body that represents all associations in the country. One of these is a proposal that when an individual is elected onto a council position, whether in the region, province, or national, they must relinquish any position they hold in an association. This will then allow them to tackle industry issues free from any bias, whether real or perceived. In placing a premium on unity, the industry must accept that there is no room to tolerate violence, and severe penalties must be meted out against those found to be party to such violence. This may include withdrawal of operating licenses for such operators and other harsh penalties. Industry empowerment model. Our discussion on the empowerment model depart from the principle that says any empowerment model must benefit the rank and file in the industry and the taxi industry as a whole. We must ask hard questions about the billions that government continues to invest in the industry in the form of taxi recapitalization program. We must have an honest conversation about who the real beneficiaries are of these investments, so that we can make decisive interventions that enable the industry to become the primary beneficiaries. Various models of empowerment vehicles will be explored, which include options ranging from a national company or a national banking or cooperative that will be the vehicle through which the industry is empowered. There are various models, either initiated by the industry itself or government, that we can draw lessons from. As we reimagine the taxi recapitalization program, we must ensure that through this intervention, we emerge with a taxi industry that owns its value chain and benefits from additional revenue sources. We have made a firm commitment that the time has arrived for the taxi industry, which moves the vast majority of our people to benefit from the subsidy scheme. The subsidy scheme will form an integral part of our economic package for the industry. Now, in government, we are already thinking about the implementation of this subsidy scheme from the 1st of April in 2021. That is what we are talking about. As we discuss, this is what we are looking at going forward, because it's long overdue. If you are transporting 15 million people per day across the nation, and you transport workers, students, and everybody, that industry deserves government attention and support in terms of in the form of a scheme like we do with other modes of transport. On industry regulation, key focal issues in addressing the regulatory framework for the industry include challenges relating to issuing of operating licenses, which include long turnaround times despite the 60-day turnaround time provided for in law. Some of these are due to capacity challenges of the provincial regulatory entities and the National Public Transport Regulator, which are being attended to. The industry has raised sharply the issue of government officials, traffic officers, and police officers who own taxis. Their participation in the industry fuels violence and weakens law enforcement as they are prone to intervene to protect their associations or friends. The current fragmented approach, which relies on the capacity of individual provinces to enforce public transport laws and weak support from the South African police services, creates a culture of impunity. The discussion will seek to address the challenge posed by the prevalence of illegal operators. You know, bakona if fly by night in this particular industry. People who just operate, piggyback, and all of that. In our database, we've got 137 operators in ATIS. But we know that out there you've got more than 300,000 taxis. And some of them are not legal operators, in a sense. Out of the estimated 200,000 taxis in this country, it is our estimate that approximately 63,000 of these operate without operating licenses and therefore illegal. Regulating e-hailing services is getting urgent attention. The National Land Transport Bill that puts in place the regulatory framework for regulating e-hailing services has been passed by Parliament and is now before the President for assent. You know what led to the feud between, in the air-hailing space, Uber, Bolt, and Taxify, and also meter taxis. So that led to this particular bill, which is now have been completed, is now before the President to assent to that. This work was started by Minister Joe Maswanganyi and finished by Blayton Zimande. And as you would see, I am finishing everything. My name is Mr. Fix, Finish and Clark. So that I'm taking it to its logical conclusion. I'm proud to undertake this work that has been started by my colleagues and taking it to its logical conclusion. Discussions about this subsector must bring us closer to creating and supporting homegrown solutions, taking advantage of the fourth industrial revolution. Industry professionalization and customer care. Our commitment to assist the industry to professionalize and develop a customer-centric culture has never been greater. Discussions and solutions at the National Taxi Lekgotla cannot only be limited to regulation and empowerment. It is time the industry embraced a professional image and culture underpinned by respect for the commuter. The conduct of taxi operators on the road displaying flagrant disregard of the law and the rights of other road users remain a pervasive problem. It is an open secret that self-regulation in this regard has failed. The discussions must give serious consideration to a penalty regime, which may, among others, include a form of demerit system similar to ARTO. Shoddy customer service and safety of commuters continue to characterize industry operations. In building a customer-centric ethos, the rights and interests of passengers and other road users must always underpin the future of taxi industry we want to build. It is equally important that the complaints mechanism that must find expression in the Code of Conduct envisaged in law must be effective with tangible consequences. Conversations on the prevalence of gender-based violence in the taxi industry have been muted for too long, and this remains a source of serious concern. The discussions on gender-based violence must occupy center stage, and we must collectively find sustainable measures to address this decisively. The conversation must also include safety of women and children in the taxi environment, with particular emphasis on the girl child. Out of these conversations, we must emerge with tangible actions, which must include steps being taken by associations and other industry structures to ensure that those who continue to perpetuate these heinous crimes are brought to book. Further consideration will be given to punitive measures against these criminals, which must include banning them from the industry. Training of operators and taxi across the value chain should be an integral part of the industry development and skilling program. Interventions by various stakeholders such as the Transport Education and Training Authority, TETA, the private sector and government must be coordinated such that are all focused towards developing a professional cadre underpinned by standards that elevate the industry beyond its current levels of professionalism. These discussion documents are available on our website. Copies will also be available from our offices at national, provincial, and district level. And besides that, we are on Twitter, and Ayanda will tell you about our Twitter handle, which is DOT, because Tandy, I don't know why you look at me so horrible, because my Twitter is my Twitter, it's not government. So the people who follow me follow Mbalula, so Minister of Transport. But you follow the Department of Transport, and Ayanda will announce that, including on Facebook and all of that, and contribute also in this discussion to shape the future of the taxi industry. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Honorable Minister. I'll make